Happy UN MSME Day. And thank you to all the partner organizations for joining us for today's Small Business Champions Award ceremony. This is the fourth year that we've done this, but the first year that we're partnering with WIPO. So Darren, thank you very much for being here. Our theme this year is empowering indigenous people's economic development through trade. Now, why did we choose this theme? Because we have an obligation to ensure that trade and trade policy works to bring the most vulnerable communities to the table and allow them the opportunity to grow through trade. And I'm delighted with the response to our call and how the Small Business Champion Program is doing its part in creating a more inclusive approach to trade. Incidentally, in the last 2 months, the MSME Working Group has welcomed the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cape Verde, the Maldives, Mozambique, and just yesterday, Mauritius. So now we have 103 members. So we're running a very tight schedule today. And when you have a panel like this, I'm not going to even bother to introduce them. If you don't know who they are, then you're in the wrong place. So I'm going to give the floor right away to the Director General of the WTO. And my question for you, DG, is how can the WTO work to foster trade inclusiveness? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew, and congratulations. We should actually have clapped for you when you said 103 members. So well done, and I'm very happy to see Darren here in a partnership with WIPO. It always helps. We're always looking how we can get money from you. And of course, a partnership with Pamela. She's a star, you know, the supply side shock we need. So I'm well surrounded. I want to congratulate Matthew on the very active posture he's taken in running the MSME and try to make it an exciting subject, an exciting arena to work in and work for, because I myself personally think this is so important. Small businesses have fewer resources than their bigger competitors to weather uncertainty and to navigate complexity in the business environment. And that is why an open, stable, and predictable trading environment, anchored, of course, in WTO rules rather than in power dynamics, is a vital tool for using trade to drive growth, development, and socioeconomic inclusion that can benefit small and medium enterprises and their owners. At the same time, it's clear that the international community can and must do more to foster socioeconomic inclusion through trade. And that includes us here at the WTO. One of the big global problems that we face now is the problem of inequality across countries and also within countries. And how do we solve this inequality? Well, one of the biggest tools we have is supporting small and medium enterprises that generate the most jobs in almost every economy and society that I know. And I'm proud to say that at the WTO, our members are taking steps to make it easier for businesses of all sizes, but particularly for MSMEs to thrive in the global economy. And there are a few things that they're doing, and I think we should continue. Some of these things you're familiar with. The Trade Facilitation Agreement. If you look at some of our developing countries, the red tape and the other costs add a tariff of 100, 200, even 300%, quote unquote, onto the goods they sell, simply because there are too many costs to trade. And so implementing the Trade Facilitation Agreement is one of the things that can really help small MSMEs to develop and to thrive. And we notice that it's particularly in the poorest countries that implementation is slow. I think for LDCs, about 44% compared to 77% for the rest of the population. So we really need to focus on this and be able to work and drive the implementation. The informal working group, before that, I also want to mention the Investment Facilitation Agreement that we are negotiating, and it's one of the secret weapons that I think we can deploy if we can get everything settled, that I think will really help us MSMEs, because it's going to do away with some of the barriers to invest in them and in the economies. The informal working groups on MISMIS and trade and gender have also become important venues, I can tell you, for sharing ideas on how to connect more MISMIS and women-owned businesses to international trade. These groups have produced practical analysis for businesses and policymakers. And for instance, with an eye to helping businesses make full use of the TSA, the MSME group prepared a compendium on authorized economic operator programs with special provisions for MISMIS. The MISMIS group and Trade and Gender group worked with ITC to produce another compendium on good practices for access to finance by women-led enterprises. Let me already take the opportunity to thank both the informal working group members and the gender working group for their active participation in these areas. But please rest assured that discussions of inclusivity at the WTO go beyond these working groups. And at MC13 this past February, ministers engaged in a constructive conversation on inclusion, reflecting the issues high placed on the WTO agenda. Supply side measures are a third part through which WTO members are working to advance trade inclusion. It's about infrastructure investments. It's about projects to build trade capacity and resilience. And of course, it's about coordinating and organizing support through Aid for Trade, as you see at this week's Aid for Trade event. With digital trade, an exciting new source of potential opportunities for businesses to grow and create jobs. We've also joined hands with the ITC at MC13 to launch a new fund, called WIDE, the Women Exporters in the Digital Economies Fund, to support women-owned business, to increase their competitiveness and to access international markets. We're going to start in 4 developing countries this fall, and MISMIS will be selected through a competitive process and will benefit from a grant complemented by technical assistance to help them set up and scale for those that are able to scale. We've launched this fund with $5 million contribution. So any donor in the room who thinks that I will not stop fundraising, I just want you to know why people can contribute to. Any private or public sector or philanthropy that wants to contribute to this one, they're most welcome. So let me end by saying that, the MISMIS group is a platform to showcase and champion these good ideas, such as the one that we're talking about, the Small Business Champions Initiative. I want to thank you, Matthew, and all your predecessors for the work on this. And this year's edition is focused on a often neglected aspect of trade inclusion, helping indigenous people use trade as a motor for economic development. So I also want to, I don't know if Tanya is here somewhere. Tanya Tewanya from New Zealand. She's part of my civil society advisory group and she pushes on this issue. So I wanted to pay her tribute because this is one of the things she's been working on. But I'm excited to see, the champions, the winners, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be with you to celebrate this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Titi. Rules rather than power will benefit MSMEs. Inequality within and between countries can be addressed by empowering MSMEs. Ramp up implementation of the TFA. Get the investment facilitation for development agreement across the line. And we need to continue to reflect how inclusiveness can be better anchored in the work of the WTO. All excellent points. Plus, donors, give us some more money.
Thank you.
Director General Tang, Tell me, what is WIPO doing to support indigenous communities and build their economic agency? Over to you, Darren.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And thanks for the invitation, DJ Ngozi, Pamela. Always a pleasure to see all of you here. First, let me just echo what Ngozi just said about inclusiveness. And it's strange coming out from the mouth of the WIPO DG, because IP is historically been seen as something that only the very biggest companies with the largest R&D budgets can get involved in. And I wanted to change that. We wanted to change that at WIPO. And so for the last few years, we've been working to build a much more inclusive IP ecosystem where not just the 1% of the world can benefit from, but from the 99% of the world can benefit from. So a lot of the work we're doing is taking IP down to the grassroots, which means connecting a lot more of the MISMEs. But I think today I want to focus a bit more on the work we're doing to support the indigenous peoples and local communities. And let me start by sharing a very, very landmark development in our treaty making. Last month, 193 member states concluded a 25-year journey of negotiations, right, to put together a new WIPO treaty on genetic resources and traditional knowledge. And this is the first time, right, that the IP system is putting the traditional knowledge and wisdom and heritage of this group of peoples who've often been marginalized by the IP system and in some cases even exploited at the heart of a WIPO treaty. So you can see how game-changing this is. I think what happens that when the treaty comes into force, what it will do is that it requires that those who are party to it amend their patent laws so that when they apply for a patent, they have to disclose whether that patent application is relying on a genetic resource of a country, on the traditional knowledge that comes from indigenous people or local communities. And you can see how significant this is, right? Because this will really help to address the issue of biopiracy that a number of the indigenous peoples have been mentioning and been quite disconnected from the IP system for a long time. I want to pay tribute to Wen Wenlin, my director of Traditional Knowledge Division, who's here, and he's been taking care of this issue for the last 25 years, from when his kids were baby to now when they have they have flown the coop. But I think this sort of development show that even despite a difficult multilateral environment in Geneva, all member states can come together and by consensus, right, agree on adjustments to the IP system that's technical, impactful, and meaningful and inclusive. So I just want to share that with you. Beyond norm setting, which is of course a core work of any UN agency, and of course it took us 25 years, right? We are also focusing on what can we do to bring IP to the grassroots. So we have a number of projects that we do on the ground to support these communities. So one example is our community entrepreneurship program that we piloted some years back under Wen's leadership. What we do is that we go to these communities and we ask them and we work with them, right, to select women entrepreneurs or community entrepreneurs. And then what we do is that we spend, I think, 6-9 months with them. So it's not a 3-day seminar or 5-day workshop where they fly in and then we download information. They're overwhelmed by it. We don't know how they apply it after a while. But we accompany them on their journey, right, over a few months. We understand what their aspirations are. We understand where they want to take their knowledge to. We respect that and we help them incorporate IP into that journey. So for example, if there's a local community, right, that's got an amazing local product, we help them to use IP to market, brand, and package a product so that instead of it being sold as in a very haphazard way, right, it's marketed and branded and packaged in a way that respects their heritage, but allows them to earn a living. And in a lot of these programs that we do, we've been able to, and right now I think about 100 women entrepreneurs have benefited from the program. They have gone on to become mentors for others in their communities as well. So there's a lot of this, information and knowledge and skills, right, that becomes translated and given to the community as a whole. Incidentally, we are doing a project in Australia right now called IP and Bush Foods, where it's going to work with the indigenous Aboriginal people of Australia and the indigenous communities to take their bush foods, right, to the market in ways that respects their heritage, but allows them to also to earn a living from this as well. And I think the project will be launched, or it really has been launched quite soon. The other thing that we have done that's quite interesting is that we know that exploitation comes sometimes from the fashion industry as well. There's a lot of traditional design that gets misappropriated, and as a result of which ends up on fashion runways in ways that the indigenous peoples or the local communities do not appreciate. So what we do is that we've started a dialogue between the fashion houses and the indigenous communities, indigenous peoples and local communities. We started the first one last year. It was very successful. We had a lot of the big fashion houses coming in, and we wanted to create a space where both the fashion houses and representatives of these communities could meet to talk in a very open, safe, and a way, right, about how can we support the needs of the fashion houses who do want to be inspired by these traditional designs, but in a way that respects the wishes of these communities. And in fact, we are seeing that more and more of these communities themselves are having their own designers. Like, for example, Danny Francisco was the first indigenous design to have a solo show at Australian Fashion Week last year. So I think what we're seeing is that these communities, right, they don't want to just be victims, they want to be empowered. So by the work that we do, right, by providing them with skills and training and development and confidence, they can take their traditional knowledge and wisdom, right, and they can take it to the world on their own terms, in a way that allows them to earn a living, in a way that allows them to sustain their heritage. And so we're looking for partners to bring more of these together. We're working with Pamela. We just signed an MOU with ITC earlier this year to support women entrepreneurs, all of that digital entrepreneurs. And we're happy to work with WTO, with the MISME community, right, to bring some of these programs to these communities, right, that are underserved in an effort collectively to build a more inclusive global trade, innovation, entrepreneurship system. Thank you very much.
Absolutely fascinating, Darren. IP matters for small business growth and innovation, and they can be balanced between respecting heritage and building businesses. But importantly for us here in this house, after 25 years, you concluded a new treaty. There is still faith next month for fisheries. So thank you very much for that inspiration.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I'm glad that it's not only at the WTO. This would be a Geneva problem.
Thank you, Darren. Executive Director Pamela, happy 60th to ITC. So tell us, what kind of work has ITC undertaken with Indigenous small businesses, and what are the lessons that you've learned through this support? And more importantly, what are your plans to take these issues forward?
Thank you so much, Matthew. And let me first of all congratulate you as chair of the MSME Informal Working Group. You've really ramped up the activity and the engagement. And I think we have a really, what's the word I would use? Exciting year coming up. So I look forward to that. And with over 100 members now, we're gone clear, as we say in Jamaica. One of the things we want to say is, over the past year, we decided that, we needed to take a more focused look at our engagement with Indigenous groups. Why? Because we did not have a dedicated approach that was tailored to their specific needs. We always engaged across the board with women and other small and medium-sized enterprises, but we did not have a tailored approach, and we realized we needed that. So we actually have partnered with Columbia University, and they are preparing an Indigenous Peoples and Trade program. And over the past 6 months, we've met with Indigenous peoples from Brazil, Panama, and Ecuador, and have been fleshing out a very comprehensive program and looking at sectors like agribusiness, ecotourism, and arts and crafts, try to ensure the program fits as many needs and contexts as possible. We aren't starting from ground zero. I think we've been working in this area in Peru and other parts in quinoa and cocoa and chocolate with farmers, and this, of course, using traditional agricultural practices, as Darren referred to. And I think that's important to note, that we are trying to build on something that we've already been doing, but we're trying to make sure it's more tailored, focused, and targeted. We've worked, of course, in the Caribbean, with Guyana and Suriname, with the Indigenous people there. The plan hopefully should be ready shortly, and we will then go to validating it. And this is a critical aspect of it, to ensure that the people we are supposedly doing it for actually agree with what we say, because, so we will put that forth, and then we've included 3 main areas: supporting product development, expanding access to finance and markets, and advancing inclusion in the digital economy. 5 lessons we've learned. The first is that the indigenous group are not a homogeneous group. You know, people do this blanket like Africa. Oh, where are you from? Africa? No, there are 55 countries. So it is important to recognize the heterogeneity of indigenous peoples and looking at their specific context, their culture, and their local, belief systems. And then once we do that, we're able to adapt the programming that we have in a way that addresses the specific needs that we've identified. The second is that we must have tailored programs and assistance that's customized and built on trust. If they don't trust us, we will get nowhere. And they have been through the ringer, if we call it that. And therefore, trust is a premium. And so we have to ensure that what we're doing allows them to trust us and to know that we mean well for them. And Darren, this goes to your treaty. I think that's going to be very important and can be a very powerful change maker in showing them that we're listening and we want you to benefit from your traditional knowledge, your genetic resources, etc. The third is the product development and access to finance and markets. The main issue here is that we need to be able to teach them where they are. And I love that you go there. That's important. They're not going to fly to Geneva. We need to go to them. We need to take this kind of training and training of trainers and also the business support organizations, incorporate them in what we do. And then also on the financial institutions, I want to make a very quick comment because I remember when I visited the Kalinago in Dominica. And I did not realize, we spoke to the chief at the time and he was saying, we want to get some money to invest in the MSMEs and so on. I said, well, why not? You have all this land and so on. And he says, the land is communal. Everybody owns it. We have no title. And the banks refuse to give money unless there's a title. So we also have to work with the financial institutions to be flexible, to be adaptable, and to look at new ways of providing financing. Fourth, the digital economy. This is going to be critical. So we need to be training them on how to do e-commerce, how to access these markets, and how to ensure that the indigenous people's needs are protected in intellectual property rights as well. And then finally, on women, we know the story. Women are the keepers of the culture. Women preserve the culture. Women are the keepers of the planet. And so we need to ensure that we work with women. So moving forward, I think one of the key elements for us is listen. We need to listen to the people who we want to help. And the core value of ITC is that we listen, we try to engage where they are, and we've actually brought to both the WTO Public Forum last year and to COP last year, indigenous young people from the Amazon and other places to see how they can tell us exactly what they feel. And then coming up this year for WTO Public Forum, again, we'll be partnering with WIPO to do to curate an exhibition to showcase what this means and how it can work. So thank you, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pamela. The importance of having a tailored approach to the Indigenous community and watch this space for the launch of the program. Trust matters when working with traditionally marginalized communities, and financial institutions need to adapt to meet the priorities of these communities. So now we're going to turn the floor to John Denton, who is the Secretary General of the ICC. He hasn't been able to join us in person, but he has been there online all along, listening to us. So John, how can the ICC and its network bring Indigenous small businesses into larger global value chains? Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And can I join the other panelists in congratulating you on the stellar work you're doing with this working group. SMEs are the heart and soul of all economies, particularly in developing and emerging economies. And as Pamela and Dr. Ngozi said so eloquently, it's really important to get focused on it. And by the way, I think it's fantastic to have Darren involved with this as well. So bringing the WIPO perspective into the discussions is overdue, Darren, but under your leadership, of course, your ambitions brought you to us as well. So I'm delighted to be with you today. Great question, Matthew. I think one of the key elements is actually recognizing the importance of ensuring there is access to supply and value chains for Indigenous businesses. I was very interested to hear what Darren had to say as an Australian about what he's doing with Indigenous Australian businesses, linking them into value chains. And we've been very interested in the developments we've seen with New Zealand, particularly with Maori businesses and broader perspectives as well. But our view is it doesn't go far enough. One of the challenges we see is also what Dr. Ngozi said, is we actually, and I think Pamela said as well, you actually need to get on the ground to help as well. There's something to be said about having global policy perspective on SMEs, but at the end of the day, you actually have to get down and get in it. One of the key initiatives that I launched about 4 years ago was the creation of ICC Centres of Entrepreneurship. And we launched our first actually in Turkey, and we just launched our 15th in the Caribbean, actually, Matthew, in Santo Domingo and Pamela. And we're now in an interesting situation where demand outstrips supply. And so we've got another set of entrepreneurship scheduled for launch this year. And we've actually had to change our operating business models to enable that to happen, because such is the demand for on the ground access, capability and skills for SMEs to allow them to get the ability to trade across borders, which obviously is one of the key elements and the strengths of the ICC. So there's one thing, I think, talking about the policy dimension, which is a very important dimension. The other is activity. One other issue is there's a lot of talk about training and capability, which is great, but as Pamela said, access to finance. You know, you trained us up enough, we now get access to finance to enable us to do the stuff. And that's an important aspect as well. So in that context, I've also launched this year an ICC Merchants of Peace Foundation. The idea of which is we're raising money. So Dr. Ngozi, we might be able to work out a way to do some projects together, but definitely I think, Pamela, there's something we can do where our aim is to raise 500 million euro, which we can then deploy in a series of projects to support on the ground activity to enable direct access to SMEs, to value chains. And it's really in underserviced communities, which is really part of, I think, the dimension that we need to apply to Indigenous communities as well, that they're generally underserved. The other aspect that I've launched in the context of the Merchants of Peace Foundation, and leaning into the extraordinary reputation we have at ICC on dispute resolution, is we're launching a project to bring access to justice to SMEs and developing and emerging economies. I think we all know that one of the great inhibitors to economic development is actually the GDP drag of not being able to settle disputes. Where that actually is particularly sharp is in developing and emerging economies, where sometimes the actual justice system is inchoate, or actually it's quite difficult to get access to it and the cost is very high. So we're trying to build a new technological platform which will enable access to justice for SMEs in those economies using the reputation and the skills of the ICC. And we think that will not only help enable SMEs to flourish, but also give great support to the development of GDP for a lot of developing and emerging economies. We know the lack of access to justice is an opportunity of GDP development, and that's something that's important for us as well. So I'm tremendously excited that the ICC continues to be involved now in the 4th edition of this small business group. I think the idea of giving awards is also exciting. I'm a competitive person myself, and businesses are always competitive. So the idea of people competing for profile and visibility, but also for the prize, which is the Small Business Champions Awards, is something we like very much. We have our own group of small business champions that operate at a global level, but we also drill down through the Chambers of Commerce and ICCs at a regional level and local level to deliver as well. So thank you for the opportunity for ICC to participate. And by the way, it is great also to say that ITC works with us, our Centres of Entrepreneurship, and Darren bringing intellectual property asset assessment to SMEs is something you've also enabled to work with us through our Centres of Entrepreneurship as well. So we're grateful to you for that. And as always, Dr. Ngozi, keep leading, keep pushing forward, keep that chin out, and happy birthday again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Meet the communities where they are. Access to finance is central to all small businesses, but especially for Indigenous communities. And access to justice and settling disputes is an element for us to consider. Thank you so much for that. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting to the winners. And no one else up here knows the winners but me. Well, and the two winners who happen to be in the audience. So I'm so pleased to announce that CELAC, the Latin America and Caribbean Network of Fair Trade Small Producers and Workers, headquartered in San Salvador, is our first winner. Congrats. And our other first winner, because there's no such thing as a second winner, our other first winner is O Canada, based in Winnipeg, Canada. Congratulations. So here to accept the awards are Carlos Zuastigui, Local Markets Coordinator from CELAC, and Justin Langan, founder of O Canada. Please please stand up, please. Yeah. Now, we want to know a lot more about your work, but before that, I would like to invite you to the podium to accept these small certificates, and importantly, for photos with the heads of all the partner organizations. I'd also like to invite the DDGs to join the photograph, and especially the very proud ambassadors and representatives of El Salvador and Canada. So please. Okay, thank you very much. So as the head table makes it back to their seat, I will ask Carlos if you would take to the lectern briefly and present your winning proposal, which is support for access to international markets, generation of opportunities for entrepreneurship, and productive change for small producers of indigenous peoples in Latin America. And this initiative will develop the competencies of small indigenous populations and producers and increase their sales through the understanding of product offerings, demand, and an annual networking roundtable. Over to you, Carlos.
Thank you very much. Just want to salute the panel. Very proud to be here representing CLAC. Thanks God for today to be in Geneva. first time. I hope it's not the last time. Well, CLAC, it's Fair Trade Producers Network Coordinator. CLAC is in Latin America. As we can see, we are in 20 countries and more than 900 organizations working with us. That means more than 15,000 people in this chain. If you can see in the map that is in that image, all the blue are the producers networks. In that case, CLAC is the Latin America one. And in the yellow part of the global map, it's the consumers or the buying sectors for these products. Now, to give you a number, 85% of the fair trade coffee comes from Latin America. 89% of the fair trade banana comes from Latin America. So it's an impact very high in what we do. Now let's go to our indigenous thing. And theoretically, the statistical numbers, 670 million people live in Latin America. As an average, by this data that CEPAL work, the 46%, it's in Guatemala, sorry. The 12% is an average for the indigenous living in Latin America. That comes to more than 80 million people in this country. What we came is with this circle, the virtual circle. What are we trying to do is first, we want to start with what we have. We work with more producers that are part of the indigenous people already. What do we start with? Giving them, trying to reduce the gap between what the market requires and what they are working right now. Then what we do is we have a product catalog or a service catalog that they can finish it up according to the requirements of the market. What we need in the fourth step of this circle is when we need the help of all of us working together as institutions, we can get the percentage of the market that it's willing to buy a product from indigenous people. What does this mean? I heard very important issues here, and I'm grateful to hear that first of all, the cost for the production of the material is higher than in an industry. There's no financial aid from banks or because of the situation of the social economy in that part of the society. And the third is that there's no trust in the market. Even though we are part of a community inside each country, they don't buy from their indigenous people. It's the tourism or the people from the outside that comes and take care of that. So if we get together and build up that little percentage that will understand what the reality is, they will help us to get closer from that producer to the buyer, according to the volume, the requirements, and the quality that we get better. The thing is to start a virtual circle that will maintain in the future. That will get us to a point that we can open it to another product, another services, and something that we can build up and let them have their own needs for living. Even though we are part of the same country, sometimes they feel like they're a part of the country, even though they're the same country. I'm from Guatemala. Imagine we are 46%, as I told you before, that they feel like they're out of the society when they're part of it. And as we were working here, we were working with ITC. I'm very grateful to mention this for a long time. We have some issues still working during this day, but as you can see in the 2023, there's an example of the amount of more than $4 million that we could work together with these fairs, bringing the products to the customer, helping. But if you see that, maybe an indigenous people is not ready for that, but we can get them to that if we connect the consumer to the producers. So this is my information. I'm more than glad to be here and to explain to you in a couple of minutes what we are trying to do. And if you need anything else, and if you want to have some information on what we are doing and we can work together, as I said, we need all of us to get involved. There's a small percentage of the market that will be able to be paying that price, knowing that it's going to be helping people that really needs it. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your. All right.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Now let me invite Justin Langan to present Canada's submission for an Indigenous Artisan Trade Gateway, an e-commerce platform and global marketplace for Indigenous crafts. Justin, hold on to your jacket.
Yes.
Pamela wants it back.
I need pictures outside.
So Justin, the floor is yours.
There we are. Merci for having me. This is incredible. Yeah, incredible work that is going on here, and it's very much appreciated as an Indigenous youth myself. So Tanshe Kiowao, respected delegates and global leaders, welcome. My name is Justin Langan, and I come from the rural community of Swan River, Manitoba, Canada. That's where I was raised, and I'm proud to come from there. I'm Métis and the executive director and founder of Okanada, an organization that is proudly led by Indigenous youth. Today, I'm excited to introduce the Indigenous Artisan Trade Gateway, a project at its core enhancing the economic prospects of Indigenous communities via digital technology. This initiative will create a global platform for Indigenous crafts, blending tradition with innovation and promoting cultural exchange. At Okanada, our mission is to empower Indigenous communities by integrating their heritage with the global marketplace. This platform will not just foster economic growth, but also enhance cultural understanding worldwide. Now, the Gateway is in its foundational phase, developing an e-commerce platform tailored for Indigenous artisans. This platform serves as both a marketplace and a digital storytelling venue, showcasing the heritage and the culture behind each crafted piece. We're also launching, as was brought up, training programs in export readiness, digital marketing, and intellectual property rights to prepare our artisans for the global market. Additionally, we will host networking events to connect artisans with international buyers, enhancing both economic opportunities and cultural dialogue. Now, through the Indigenous Artisan Trade Gateway, we anticipate significant economic boosts and benefits and increased global appreciation for authentic and distinct Indigenous crafts. Our goal is to double the income of participating artisans within the first 2 years and to foster a greater understanding and appreciation of distinct Indigenous traditions and cultures globally. Now, as we look forward, our vision is to expand this platform, integrating advanced technologies and enhancing our training programs to keep pace with global standards. We are committed to a sustainable, diverse future that respects cultural heritage while embracing market opportunities. Thank you for your attention and your support. It is very much appreciated, and let's move together, ensuring a sustainable and culturally diverse future. Merci. Thank you.
Yes, this is excellent. Thank you so much, both Carlos and Justin, for being here. Please give our very best to your teams back home. It really is an honor. And to those of you in the room, Justin and Carlos will be here for the rest of the day. We're going to do a brief interview with them so that we can bring their voices and their stories to the rest of the MSME working group. But please interact with them and get to know a little bit more about why they're doing what they're doing and how we can help them to scale this up. And it would not have been possible to have them here in person if it was not for the support of ITC and the ICC. So thank you very much for that. I know it's a bit anticlimactic to tell them a month in advance that you've won, but we had to book the tickets. But they kept very, very quiet about it. But there's nothing like having them here on the ground to interact with us. So thank you to all of you for being here today, our small business champions. It has been really remarkable seeing the 2 winning submissions, and we look forward to following your progress and to be able to work with you in terms of giving you technical assistance, capacity building, and connecting you with buyers and markets so that you will be able to scale your products and your services even more. So I shall see you all next Monday afternoon for the next MSME working group meeting. Please come. Look forward to seeing you all there. Come to ITC 60th celebration this afternoon. And a round of applause to our esteemed panelists and especially to our two winners. Thank you very much.